We're going to be just a shade late here. We have a couple technical difficulties, but we do have a quorum, so we're moving forward.
I was gonna say, I don't count for quorum, do I?
Ah. Now we really have to remember that.
I am in an airport, so if I don't respond to you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I probably can't talk at the time.
All right, we've got three, two here and one by remote. So I'll start. I don't have the script.
We have to wait for Andrew.
We got- Oh, that's right, because he's not here. All right. We'll get there. No, I need the gospel according to the city clerk. So, Court, you don't have many friends here tonight.
Let's do another dispo file.
Yeah. Court. Hey, Court, we're ready to go.
Oh, I think it's
Yeah. All right, so
working.
this is a meeting for the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. It's a special meeting for our finance. Call us to order. We have one member that may be late, one member that's joining us by Zoom, and we'll go through the litany. I don't see any public members, but if the public comes in, I ask them to come up to a microphone and identify themselves and where they live for the minute taker. The minute taker is working this remotely, so from time to time, we may hear from her that she's not catching it because somebody's microphone isn't on, or things of that nature. If somebody wishes to submit their questions or information, they can do that up until Tuesday at 1 o'clock at the city clerk's office. Having said all that, we'll call the roll to make sure we get to that point, so. And we have, well, we're not gonna vote on anything, so we don't have to worry about that. Counselor Blake?
Councilor Lake here.
Councilor Madison present.
Counselor Powers?
Councilor Chadbourne?
And Counselor Remy, you've requested to participate remotely. Can you indicate why that's necessary
Yeah,
tonight?
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I am traveling for work. I'm currently in the Boston airport, so I'm surrounded by people. But I will be paying as much attention as I can to the budget meeting tonight. I may not be able to participate depending on the timing of your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any problem with that? All right, so we've got a full house, and our agenda calls for the parking fund to be the first before us. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the committee. My name is Chelsea North. I'm the Parking Operations Manager. With parking services' varied customer base and needs, the parking system is meant to provide as much opportunity for parking in what is mostly downtown districts. Customers' needs vary greatly from Main Street businesses to workforce, residents, and Keene State students. Our budget request is meant to continue with the present service level. It is our goal to continue moving forward with the strategic parking plan. Parking services will continue to meet strategic government themes to diversify revenue and asset management strategies for parking. With interdepartmental collaboration, we will develop, adopt, and begin implementing an EV charging strategic plan. Funds for an EV charger infrastructure study has been set aside to determine the best locations, costs, and financial impacts to ensure the best financial and service outcomes. with an expanded EV charger program. In conjunction with community development, the police department, and after consultation with Public Works, we will examine methods to allow for on-street permitted parking that could allow additional housing units in the transition and high-density districts. This will require evaluation and revision of city codes related to parking. Parking services will continue to modernize our parking system with the installation of 15 new pay stations under the capital improvement program. The pay stations coverage allow for removal of the meters, opening up the streetscape, and reducing unnecessary signage. Right now, pay station transactions have increased from 4,600 per month from last year on average to 9,000 per month with the expanded program. And customers are becoming more comfortable with using the pay stations largely because of parking personnel's public outreach and education. In addition to the pay station expansion, the pay-by-app only areas have also expanded. These areas include East Railroad Street, Ralston Street, and a small section on Mechanic Street. Loss of meters has led to this transition, although the trend towards mobile app payment is also increasing. We have experienced an increase of nearly 1,000 transactions a month over FY23, providing evidence that the adoption of mobile app payments is becoming commonplace. Our new back office system has allowed convenient parking ticket payments. The instant ticket upload feature has fostered an increase in the same day payment of tickets, which historically has been kind of a deterrent from our old system, because people would forget about tickets once they got them, but now that they're instantly uploaded, people pay them right away, to the point where web-based payments are now our most utilized form of ticket payment. That's all I have for you. Do you have any questions?
Members of the committee? Mr. Remy? Yes, no?
I actually, I do have a question. If that's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been any look at turning any of the spots that have been made into reserved parking back into available to the public? I've noticed a lot of empty reserved parking and a lot of people complaining that there's not parking available for those who are looking for it.
Not at this time. The spaces that we have are codified, so they're covered under the code, and we are running at capacity with all of our reserve spaces, except for maybe a couple in the Wells Street garage, but that's only because of summertime, the usage goes down a little bit because people don't need the covered or nighttime parking as much.
I'm sorry, to clarify, I'm not talking about as far as whether they're booked or not, but I just mean as far as utilization. I know that we can probably make more money off of having a reserve space than having a metered space, but I'd rather see that spot be full because it means someone's shopping downtown than have it be empty, regardless of how much someone can pay to get.
Yeah, having dual usage is something we might be able to look into in the future, but right now when...
This may not be a question for budget time. This may be a question for another time.
Okay, we can only assume that when the all of the passes are sold, that it's being utilized to its potential. I realize that some of the spaces are empty, but that's because people pay to have the privilege of using them, and they might be at work or they might be elsewhere, but part of the benefit of having reserve parking is having the guarantee that that space will be available when a person returns. So maybe as the technology advances, especially with some of the space counters and that sort of thing, we might be able to utilize that in the future, but that might be a little ways off from now.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you.
Tina?
Yeah, I know if I was renting a space, I'd want to know it was available for whenever I wanted to use it, if I come home for lunch or something, but it's a good question. I just wanted to say that, you know, the success of the changes that you've implemented is in the numbers, and that's such a positive sign, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? You got 20
you.
minutes to get there.
Right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Cor Blomquist, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. And sit back, relax. We're going to have a conversation for a little while. Oh, try not to bore you too badly.
You can also pull.
Some the chairman may remember our days of our Roads and Commode shows, so I don't know if this will be at quite the same level, but hopefully you'll give us a kind of an overview of what's been going on tonight. Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to review the Public Works Department's fiscal year 24 operating budget. The department's budget is built around a number of important documents and policies. Two of the key influencers is the department's mission, and that's up on the screen right now, and which is to provide resource planning, quality management, transportation, water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste infrastructure, and community education for Keene residents and visitors. The Public Works services are at the highest level of efficiency, economical, and environmentally sensitive manner. Again, this is one of our primary goals as we are again looking at our operations and looking at our budget. The other key influencer is the City Council's adopted goals. And of course, the department, we support the goals in a number of areas. We support your goal number 2, to support the diverse needs of all Keene residents. We support the infrastructure goal, continuing to ensure that Keene's municipal infrastructure supports the various needs of Keene residents and businesses. And the goal number 8, public engagement, conduct effective, ongoing public communication engagement with Keene residents and businesses and with other partners as we negotiate these challenging times. And as you've heard me talk about, joining between our Facebook, our Twitter, our email list, you can be in the Public Works know. We do have, if you look at underneath our admin section, we have an update to where we've been continuing to grow in that area. And that's extremely important, particularly as we communicate all the work that we do. The department's budget is made up of the 6 funds. We have work in the general fund, the equipment, parking, sewer, solid waste, and water. The total budget for the department is about $23.6 million, which represents approximately 36% of the overall city budget. So our department represents a significant component of the services the city residents receive. The department is also responsible for approximately $18.7 million in revenue. And those revenue areas, of course, come through our water and sewer and our solid waste area, and also our internal service fund, which is our equipment fund, providing equipment in those. On the water and sewer area, particularly on revenues, in discussions with the finance director, of course, we'll be coming back to you with recommendations on any sewer water increases. Initially, based on the budgets developed, it looks like we're going to, again, attempt to hold the sewer rates. But again, the water fund continues to be on the edge when I talk about the amount of funds that we have available to it in the unallocated. We are looking at maybe between a 3 to 5% increase in the water rates, and that would be for all services provided by water. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming as we continue to work through the budget. The services provided by the department are life-sustaining and make it possible for residents to live, work, and play within the community. These are the services that are impacted and used by every resident, business, and visitor to the city of Keene every single day. As I like to say, we're there when you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth. We're there when you hit the other handle. We are there when you drive down the street and you start going off to work, to the grocery store, whatever. Those are the services that the department provides. The proposed FY24 budget maintains the current level of services. This does not mean we are satisfying our customers, but it is we are meeting the needs that we can with the resources that are available to us. The ability to maintain this level is extremely difficult. As you have heard from other departments and within the community, cost of materials and services have dramatically increased over the years. In the last 18 months, the department has seen a rise of 10 to 45% in the cost for many of our items. And you'll hear from my other division heads as they talk about some of the critical items and areas and the cost impacts that they've been seeing. There's also been an increased cost to labor. As we all know, there's an extremely tight labor market today, and that has been generating issues not just for our vendors, but also for the department. Our suppliers and services that are provided are paying more for wages, which is being passed along to us. We're seeing delays in supply. We are continuing seeing issues in supply chains. We're, for example, right now, I'm still waiting 18 months for a VACCOM to be delivered to us. It took 18 months for a transformer for our Martel Court, once ordered, to arrive. So those issues are continuing to be seen and impacted by the department. Residents continue to look for higher and more services. There continues to be a desire for more sideway work, for example. The current budget we have right now, and the highway can talk, Duncan and Harry can talk more about, is just a triage. And I know that does frustrate some of our counselors, but it is exactly that. We're getting to the worst of the worst with our operating budget. Complaints continue on trash and litter along streets and in neighborhoods and in public places. And there's a desire from many of our residential areas for increased attention. The budget does continue our annual Green Up Keen, and I think you saw the report from Andrea from our office about how successful this year is. But there is no funding for a sustained routine cleanup program. We are a complaint and spot response organization right now on this. If someone has an issue of dumping or other things, we will respond. But again, we do not have a program when we're out there doing any kind of patrolling or active cleanup. The department is barely keeping up with our maintenance of our downtown area. This is due to, of course, the aging infrastructure, and we're continuing to talk about that through the downtown project, but also for its high demand of the downtown. As you all know, there's a continued interest to have events and activities, and that places stress on the system out there. All you have to do right now is walk around, and we're trying to continue to convert beds over to annuals, but some of the grass areas still are showing their wear and tear, and continues to be difficult for us to just keep that up and looking. We're also seeing other issues that impact the city. For example, the homeless issue. That is across the city, multiple departments' response to that. But again, it's not an area that again has been traditionally within our budget. So those kinds of things that are occurring in our society, within our city, is also stressing out our budget. Another area of concern is recruitment and retention. Recruitment is through, I'm sure Beth Fox, HR director, commented about it. It is a continuous effort for us. The work performed by the department staff is closely aligned with our construction industry. There is a high demand for craftsman skills, and in particular for individuals with commercial driver licenses. You're going to find in our budget, one of our supplemental requests the manager has recommended is for additional funding for training for CDL drivers, so we can attempt to grow within. Back in February of 2022, the Federal Highway Motor Carriers changed the rules for obtaining a commercial driver license. We now are required to do theory training, meaning that there's either in-person or online training about how you operate a commercial driver vehicle. And then there's behind the wheel training. It can average up to about 270 hours for all that training combined. Right now, there are some private companies that provide it, anywhere from $3,800 to $4,500 per individual. Staff is looking at whether we can do some of this internally. But again, that would be a new workload for several of the departments as we move forward with that. The immediate impact is employers are raising wages and competing against each other. I mean, that's probably one of our biggest struggles is we're not just competing against other municipalities, we're competing against the construction companies, we're competing against the other, particularly for CDL drivers, against the other companies that utilize those. We have had employees go through the selection process, receive and accept our offer to only notify us just before they come aboard that they have accepted another position in another area. And that is happening more and more frequently for us. It's, again, a little surprising. We figure once someone's gone through our process, they're going to start aboard with us. But we're seeing more and more of that occurring where they decide to move on to someone else. Being down positions, of course, affects our ability to respond to events, in particular those events and services that are driven by numbers. Snow plowing is one of those. How do we clear roads? Well, again, when you have 236 miles of roadway, 52 miles of sidewalk, it's numbers. If I can put 5 sidewalk tractors out there, if I can put 20-plus snow vehicles, I can get it done in 8 to 14 hours. The less number of vehicles I have, the longer it takes us to respond. Employees in the market today are also looking for different reasons to work for an employer. Compensation is not necessarily a main driver. You've been hearing this, I think, from other departments. People are looking for other things, from the focus of service to balancing work that provides a more work-family balance. And what this has been doing is, because we have been working very lean, and you'll be hearing this particularly from our utilities area, Aaron Costa, we have employees who are no longer interested in performing standby duties that has them on standby every other week. In the past, we had employees who were totally willing because they got paid overtime, they got standby pay. Now, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. So if you can imagine, every other week, you are restricted from going anywhere, et cetera. And that's what we're seeing, particularly in our utility areas where we do require 365, 24/7 operational coverage. We have a number of, again, supplemental requests that deal with that, CDL, but also too, Aaron will be talking about an additional employee, particularly in his areas, and they'll be going over with that. I also have an additional request right now in the supplemental. It is for a project manager. And what we're looking at for this particular position is an individual that can focus on our larger projects. Right now, the engineering division has 3 engineers. They perform the design, contract and specification development, and also oversee the work in the field. Today, they're averaging about $3.5 million split between them all on an annual basis. They're also providing assistance to other areas of the city. So these are the folks who are doing the water main work, the surface lot maintenance, the road preservation. That's the bread and butter that the engineering group performs. They're also doing some other projects that do have some consultant support. Those include things like the Marlborough Street corridor, multi-use trail projects. Don has talked to you, city engineers talked to you a lot about the upcoming one on from Eastern Avenue out to the bypass. Again, those are typically handled by those 3 engineers. They also provide assistance to other departments in developing and implementing their capital in-house projects. I think you probably heard from Andy Bohannon, Parks Rec Facilities Director. We work very closely with him and his staff on some of the bigger projects. For example, the repair of the wall out here at City Hall. We're helping to manage that. We also work closely with him on the management of the Pat Russell Park. So the engineering group provides those services to the other areas. But we have a number of very large projects coming down the pike, and some of them are here today. And these projects require significant efforts in development and implementation. There are significant public processes. There's interactions not just with the development team, but also in design and all the way through construction. I mean, you're experiencing that with the downtown project right now, how much engagement we have had with the community on that project. And that engagement is going to continue even when we move into construction. And it literally, right now, Don and I are pretty much splitting the duties of trying to manage that with everything else on top of that. We also managers talked about it, grants. We do not have a grant writer. The grant writer are myself, Don, and anyone else who's free in engineering and other departments. And these grants, as we're seeing through the IJJ, the other federal funding, are available. They have quick turnaround times, and they're competitive, meaning that people have to keep track of when things are due. You have to attend webinars. I spent 8 weeks of every other week webinars on the EV program that's coming out here that they just issued the rules on for application. So that takes time. And having someone who's in the know about those types of programs, et cetera, is critical going forward. The projects that are where we're looking at, again, helping for this position to be managing, as I mentioned, the downtown infrastructure project. Yes, we're getting through the concept design. We're going to have to move into final design, construction. And as you can imagine, that's all going to be very intense. You're all hearing what the public is looking for those interactions. We have the Safe Streets for All Planning grant that we were awarded a $400,000 grant that will be looking at safety issues throughout the community. Our goal is to complete that process by next July to be eligible for implementation grants. So that is going to, again, require some fairly extensive, again, coordination between a consultant, city staff, and the public to go through and accomplish that. We have the Lower Winchester Street reconstruction that is currently under design right now. That's an $8.6 million project. We have the West Side downtown parking structure, which is a $10.9 million project. We currently have preliminary funding for that we need to implement. Again, we just haven't been able to get that in the queue yet. Our goal is to go ahead and get that in the queue sometime in the fall. But again, that is the reason being it keeps in some ways slipping is because myself and the city engineer, we're just cram-packed with not just projects, but also all the other things that we support the council on. So it's a general position that would be responsible for project development and planning, budget development, financial management, communication and coordination, management of ad hoc steering committees, project administrations, making sure that schedules are met, coordination is met, consultant management, and implementation management. So it is a position that we see as critical going forward to be able to successfully, particularly, move these larger projects through. Again, our resources, are continuing to be stressed, and we're recommending that you go ahead and approve that for it. I want to thank you for your time. This is probably one of the few opportunities that department and my division heads get an opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to call it the bigger picture about what the department is doing, getting feedback on what your thoughts are on services, and please, I encourage you to ask those questions of them. They are prepared. They know their stuff. I am very proud of them and have been very proud of them. And I want to thank you again. We can start with the Public Works Administration, which on page 146. And as we start, the first round of staff can come on up and join us. As I mentioned, Public Works, the administrative section. We're a department of about 69 folks. The administration is comprised of myself. I have office manager and administrative one position, and then the two assistant Public Works folks, directors are there as part of that senior team. As I mentioned earlier, through admin, you can look at our what we're indicating. Back in 21, we had about 35,000 outreaches through our Facebook pages. We're now up to over 62,000 outreaches. These are interactions. And yes, it is a wow. And I think, again, part of it is just we do a lot. I know I've been forwarding to you some of our recent announcements just to keep you in the know, line striping, et cetera, because, again, the activities we do impact how people move about and around. The request for that project manager is in the admin area right now. Other than that, I will certainly answer any questions about the administration section. If not, I'm going to be turning it over to Dawn, Harry, and Duncan. So you don't have to hear me anymore tonight. I promise.
Did you hear that?
They've got it written down, and so do the people behind me.
Don't believe it for a second.
Yeah, we know. Yes, ma'am.
Court, you were talking earlier about project manager, new position,
Yes,
and that's in here.
and that's in here, yes.
And the grant writer,
That's that person I'm expecting to do that work too.
well, what I was thinking is, I mean, have you considered the possibility of like a grant writer for the city? Because there's so many grants for so many departments.
Yeah, I have considered that. The county has a grant writer for the county, but we have different departments that do very different things that they are most knowledgeable about. And so it'd be very difficult for a grant writer to put together the kind of application our city engineer does for some of these road construction projects. It can be done for sure, but the employees who are really in charge of those projects are doing a great job, and they are very successful right now at getting the grants. But the problem really has been we haven't been able to keep up with it. I mean, the amount of applications for grants and then just managing these large projects, it's just been nonstop. And so by adding a project manager we will be able to better split out some of the duties, and that some of those duties include grant writing, which for that department is a big piece of the job. But it's also construction. When these construction projects are ongoing, I pick up the phone and call engineering when someone's calling me to complain because there's a blockage somewhere or something's not going exactly right. And so it's a very time-consuming effort.
So my last question is, if you, well, when you hire this project manager / grant writer, they'd have to be an engineer or an engineer background? I mean, like.
They don't necessarily have to be an engineer. Certainly having some engineer, or I'm going to call it construction and project management background will be important. Come aboard, we're not, again, I'm not necessarily looking for an engineer who's going to stamp plans. This is more of a project management, managing resources. So that's not necessarily a engineer.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I guess just following up on that, do we have a job description and requirements already written out for it?
Yes, we do. See, I talked long enough, he had to get on the plane.
Not
Thank you.
quite, not quite. But no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucio, City Engineer. Obviously, I'm going to be talking to you about the engineering division. Our fiscal '24 budget is largely unchanged from last year, the current fiscal year, with a couple of important exceptions that I'll talk about in a minute. That said, I should point out that we're not immune to some of those, macroeconomic forces that Course was talking about. We are seeing the effects of inflation on things like, printer paper, the equipment that we use for surveying and field work and that sort of thing. But so far, we've been able to largely absorb those cost increases by underspending in the technical services line item. And we've done that mostly because over the last few years, we've been a little more deliberate about incorporating a design budget in the CIP a year or two in advance of the proposed capital plans. So we're front-loading the capital projects with a little bit of design money so we can pay for the expenses and the work that needs to be done to support those projects with money that's earmarked for those projects. So that's kind of carried us through. And really, the engineering division is pretty resource light in terms of the operating costs. It's really printer paper, stakes, spray paint, lots of pens and pencils. So we don't have a very, very big line item in the budget. We do have a couple of supplementals this year that we need to talk about. The first one is a $2,400 line item for survey software. So we've been using the same equipment for surveying now for a number of years. The software used to support that equipment, to take the data collected in the field and get it into a format that we can use for design in AutoCAD, has heretofore been one-time purchase. What we purchased with the survey equipment back in 2019, I believe. Like every other software developer, they realized that if selling us the software once was good, then selling it to us every year is better. So they've switched their business model. They will no longer provide updates and security patches for our current version, and instead they're going to a subscription-based model. So now it's a $2,400 per year expense, for that software, and that will be an annual increase. So we've added that as a supplemental this year. The other supplemental is a one-time expense, and this is to replace one of the two primary systems that we use for surveying. we have, like I said, two systems. One is an instrument that uses essentially lasers, and it's optically based. It fires a laser from a fixed point to a target, and it records the distance and the direction and the azimuth and elevation and what have you. The other system that we use is based on GPS. Essentially the same technology that's in your iPhone, only much, much, much better. And that's our, I'd say, go-to instrument whenever we can use it. It's a lot easier to set up, a lot quicker to get the data that we need. For example, if we're doing a survey on an accident scene for the police department, we can set that up and get in and out and help them get the road opened a lot quicker than we could with the fixed-based instrument. Unfortunately, that instrument has some limitations. Our version we put into service almost 20 years ago. It was early 2000s. We bought that instrument. Doesn't work real well under tree cover. Doesn't work if there's high-tension power lines in the vicinity. We have trouble getting a good fix on it. So it does have some limitations. And again, it's an issue of really just sort of planned obsolescence. We send that instrument back to the manufacturer's rep for calibration and maintenance every couple of years. They're now telling us that they can't support that instrument, that they can't get the software patches, and they're just not going to be able to maintain it in the future. So we are looking to replace that instrument in the coming year with the newer version of essentially the same instrument. It's a newer version, it's gotten almost 20 years of development since we bought that one. We haven't actually played with it yet, but what we've read in the manufacturer's literature is suggesting that it'll do a lot better under tree cover and in those low visibility type situations where we've had problems with our current instrument. And it should be able to serve us for another 15 or 20 years. So we think that it's a worthwhile expenditure, and we hope that you look favorably on it. Court also mentioned that we're going to talk about some big picture things, so I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to just talk about kind of where we see the future for us. And Court talked about a lot of the federal grants that we've been successful in getting, the big projects that we've got on our docket. It's a great problem to have, to be honest, but right now the federal government is pumping money into infrastructure at a rate that we haven't seen during my career, which is fantastic, but it is raising its own set of problems. There's only so many consulting engineers in the region that can do these projects, that can design these projects. There's only so many contractors in our region that are capable of constructing these larger infrastructure projects. And with more infrastructure money getting pumped into the economy, there's more and more folks chasing these same consultants and contractors to do this work. So I think if I had to say my biggest concern over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be competing with all of the other municipal and state agencies that are trying to take advantage of the bolus of federal spending right now. So I would love to take your questions.
Members of the committee? Councilor Remy? Are there city councilors here? Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Good evening. Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director. Have Harry McKelvey here.
Harry McKelvey, Transportation and Stormwater Operations Manager. Good evening.
So I'll just start out by saying that Harry has had his honeymoon period officially end right at the beginning of last winter as he took over the reins of the Highway Department. And he's done a remarkable job for us, taking ownership and bringing in some new ideas, while also managing a fairly significant turnover in our department, where our department's getting younger. We've had a lot of our senior staff who have retired after many, many years of service, and we brought in a number of young folks who are stepping up to the plate and bringing their own ideas and initiatives. And Harry is doing a very good job of managing that rodeo. So I'm just going to let Harry address the highway division before we transition into the solid waste.
Sure. So as you know, the highway deals with, the roads, the sidewalks, the trees, the downtown, the flowers, the drainage systems. We also supplement, helping out Parks and Recreation or the city clerk's office for voting or things like that. So we kind of jacks of all trades, masters of none. Our main operation really is winter operations, but we are responsible for the line painting and, all the other things that we do in the summertime and the construction season as well. We correct, drainage problems and deal with, interface a lot with, people from the city, whether they're residents or not, with potholes or, a drainage problem in their yard or, some conflicts of dead trees or something like that. So, and that's also the traffic control system and the streetlights are also part of the highway division. Overall, I think the guys do a fantastic job. I think I have 25. That includes a sign guy too. I didn't mention that guy. And, they're doing an awesome job. And I support them, I facilitate so they can do their job. And that's really my focus. So under that, I am looking at a couple of supplementals to keep those things moving. One is the sign maintenance. I'm asking for a 10% increase. Let's see, it's $2,327. And that's in light of the fabrication of our signs has gone up 100% in the last 3 years, whether it's, a Keene State student collecting signs or just replacing older signs, or there's a lot of new projects that require some signage. Every roundabout, for example, there's a ton of signs related to that. So those things have increased over time, and our budget hasn't reflected that. So that's one of them. Another one is one of our bigger operations, of course, is the winter ops, and we had a 20% increase in salt last year, and we were able to, make it through with our existing budget, but we had a softer winter. We used 300 tons less than we did the year before, but we paid a lot more money for that product. So I'm looking at $56,995, which I think is 20% of the salt budget to cover us in lieu of, a regular winter. Also, one of the other ones was the city council approved some additional parking spaces running up Court Street and Washington here, and we're looking to increase our budget for that to be able to mark those out annually, and that's $1,200. And with that, I have questions for me.
Before you get to your question, I
sorry.
just want to highlight one type of initiative, so you have an idea of the types of new ideas that are coming through the highway division. So years ago, we used to do in-house paving quite often in the city, and then it's gravitated towards private sector services over the years. Any large paving project, but small paving projects. We started experimenting a couple years ago with grader patching. We would identify a road, put some asphalt down, have the grader work it in, and smooth out the road. It didn't look great always, but it got the job done. And then a few years ago, we borrowed the drag box, which is basically a small paver, and we borrowed it from the town of Brattleboro and started working our own paving projects, really small paving projects, but paving projects nonetheless, and found that we were able to do it quite well, also considerably less expensively than if we were getting these types of services from the private sector. So whenever we have these good ideas that come forward, we start thinking, okay, well, what do we need for resources in order to make this kind of thing happen? And so we did some research. This was initiated from the ground level. The foremen and some of their employees really got the information together, presented it to Harry. that got presented to me, and then we had to do the sell job to the boss to make sure that he was on board with it. And we ultimately bought ourselves a drag box, a used drag box, for, you know.
Very
for-
old,
for-
but good.
But for, you know, we had it fixed up by our fleet division. They did an amazing job. It made it look like it was brand new. And now we have this resource that's available to us to be able to put down asphalt at a considerable savings from if we were having to procure these services from the private sector. It's not, we're not gonna take over the paving business, but for certain applications, it's the absolute right thing to do. It's a really good use of our resources, and the product that we get out of it is fantastic. And these are the types of initiatives that are coming forward from the Highway Division with some of this new brain power.
Thank you, Duncan.
Questions? Bettina?
Yeah, a question for Harry. On page 153, I was looking at overtime under plowing, and I was just curious, like, it says overtime regular. What does that mean?
I think that's just regular overtime. It's not just the time and a half, like when, you know, they come in and work their 8 hours and it's really a 10 or 12-hour shift, so that 2 to 4 hours more is regular overtime. I think if there was escalated overtime, it would be like holidays or shift change, working nights or picking snow. There's shift changes and things like
And
that.
is that usually for, like, winter plowing? So I'm
Yeah.
looking under, because I'm looking at, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. It says
Yeah.
plowing, never mind.
That's right. I don't blame you having, you know, I think Highway has like 30 different organizations there. So I understand.
Just have a two-part question about personnel costs. On page 154, the personnel costs for sidewalk maintenance went from $93.77 last year to $474. Thank you. My mic was off. The personnel costs for sidewalk maintenance last year went from $93.77 last year to $474 this year. And the personnel costs for side and gravel roads went from $164,588 last year to nothing this year. And maybe I'm just reading it wrong.
Right.
It's that software.
Right. This was the merge, right?
This
Oh,
was
okay.
the merge. We took things that were related to like road maintenance
Yeah.
and, as we called it, smushed them together because there was like 6 or 7 different cost centers. And for the way to set up payroll in the new system, we really needed to organize it a little bit different to get the information that we need and to have it calculate the way we
Okay,
need.
perfect, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other counselors? Yes, sir.
Hi, Bobby Williams, City Councilor Ward 2. Well, you knew sidewalks were coming up today, so here I am. Thank you, Councilor Madison, for the question on sidewalks. I did notice that we really came in quite a bit under budget last year on spending on sidewalks, and it doesn't seem like that budget is going up. Certainly not as much as the road budget is going up, and I would at least like to have, you know, some equalization between the amount we spend on sidewalks and the amount we spent on streets. Now, I didn't quite understand what you were just saying about consolidation, and is some of the sidewalk money getting consolidated into some other, what's going on there with respect to the personnel budget?
So some of the sidewalk money, how we allocate in the past is based on actual for like a 3-year history. So if there's been activity, then we create the budget for sidewalks based on the activity. But part of that was also part of the consolidation with the other old cost centers, now orgs, in the new system.
So is that under a different cost center now, or consolidated into a cost center, and which one would that be?
I can actually, I don't have the full list, but I'm more than happy to put an email together and just let you know when we
Okay,
had
yeah,
finished together.
I'd like to understand that a little better. I mean, I don't want to accuse people of underspending on sidewalks if we're doing the
Right.
right thing, but I do think we
also as
are
part of
underspending
the-
on sidewalks.
Yeah. And also as part of the CIP projects too, there's a lot of sidewalks that are into the CIP projects that go through
Okay.
capital improvements. So a lot of the repairs, when they're working on the roads, they're doing the sidewalks, they're doing the guardrails and
So-
things
so
like
you're
that.
getting
They
into my-
become a project.
My next question, which is about the CIP, you know, we did have the, I've got the CIP right here, the Sidewalk Asset Management Program for the 2023 to 2029 CIP spends about, well, for fiscal year '23, it should spend $272,400 on sidewalks. Now, is that in this budget, or, you know, where would I find that?
That's in the capital projects
That-
part
yeah,
of the budget.
those are capital projects. So the cost center for the highway division is for small section repair and maintenance. The cost for the larger CIP projects, Don can tell you pretty much exactly where those funds are being spent for the upcoming year. I mean, it's based on the prioritization list that we have. That's not what this budget is for. It's for small, less than usually 100 feet of repair and maintenance work. So whether it's asphalt or concrete, we would replace like with like.
Okay. Don, perhaps, can you enlighten us a bit as to what are some upcoming sidewalk projects?
Sure, but only if I can steal your book. Yeah, so in the CIP, it's page 89, it lists the sections of sidewalk we're planning for each year. So this year, right now, actually, we just let out the contract for North Lincoln Street and Main Street. We had included in that scope to do a section of School Street. That one we ended up not putting into the contract because our concern about escalating costs. We didn't think we were going to be able to fund it, and that ended up being valid. But we are going to be replacing the section of sidewalks on North Lincoln from Beaver Street to Roxbury Street, sorry. And on Main Street from Silent Way down to Greenfield Ave.
Thank you very much. I get asked by my constituents about this all the time, so I like to have good answers for them. Thank you.
So I just wanted to add, in regards to the operating budget and the personnel lines, we spend a lot of time tracking how much time we spend when, in fact, we may be doing roads and culverts and all of those things, and then coming back and then figuring out a percentage was for sidewalk work, a percentage was for the road, and I'm not sure it's that valuable, to be perfectly honest. And so we went through and we looked at how many of these wage lines can we actually consolidate, because it would cut down in the amount of work that we're doing in terms of entering payroll and making, charging different accounts for the projects that we're doing. And so we've done that in multiple areas. Now, Public Works has been the most challenging to do that in, to be honest. And we got him partway there, but I would like to consolidate even more accounts next year. And so that's really where this is coming from.
Anybody else up here before I chime in? Counselor Remy? No? All right. So is it not true that these had 100 different accounts? Because it always tied back to two reasons. One was DRA was looking for it reported in certain fashion. I'm probably dating myself, but the state that sets the tax rate. And the city councilors at one time wanted this kind of, rather than understanding gross budgeting, right? Thank you.
That's the biggest reason
All
right there.
But there is one wage, one that considerable change, so I'm sure you consolidated a few, but page 155, wages full-time under drainage is up to 243,000 for wages.
Right, that was a
Beaverbrook drainage.
combination, they put open and closed together.
Right, that's correct.
Believe it or not, we actually charge separately, whether it was an open drainage system or a closed drainage system. So
I
we've
believe
now created one drainage
I
system.
believe it. Thank you. Other questions? So between the two of you, how many years there, sitting there?
I'm in my 32nd year.
I gotta be right there too. 64 years. It's about my age. How's that?
You don't look it.
Thank you.
Tough crew right there. Get a lot of work done, as do the rest of them behind. Nothing else? Next group, please.
Thank you.
I think that's me.
Awesome.
Solid waste.
Good night.
So the solid waste division is humming along, although several years ago when I came to the budget review, I was talking about sort of the double-edged sword of being a popular place to visit, and that trend that we've noticed for years now has actually. I don't want to say it's gotten worse because that's not really how I would want to characterize it. We've just gotten more popular with individuals bringing up their materials to our facility, a facility that frankly was not designed for public in mind. It was designed originally, because I was here when that was happening. It was designed as a commercial facility, and that represents the absolute bulk of our business. The commercial trash versus what individuals bring up is, it's completely two different stories. But the simple fact of the matter is that our facility is getting somewhere in the order of upwards of 20,000 visitors a year in a facility that is difficult to control the traffic patterns, particularly on a weekday. On a weekend, excuse me. So we've actually, over the past couple of years, we've tried some experiments of expanding the hours, particularly on Saturdays, going from an 8 to 1 time frame to a traditional 7 to 3, which is what we do during the weekdays. And we do that between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and that's taken some of the pressure off. But I drive by the facility sometimes on a Saturday, and that traffic can be sometimes backed out all the way to Route 12. We do a remarkable job of processing people through that facility in as quick a manner as possible, but we're definitely, if this trend continues, we're going to have to be revisiting either expanding hours or doing something so that we can, ensure the public's safety in doing the business that they want to do at our facility. I don't have all the answers to that at this point. I'm just calling this out as something to note for future years as we're managing it now, but that may change. And speaking of change, so we are currently in the second year of our contract with Waste Management. They are responsible for the transportation and disposal of the waste from our transfer station. It's around 30,000 tons per year, of which around 23,000 is generated within the city of Keene borders, which we have a flow control ordinance that requires all trash that's generated within the city of Keene to come to our facility. And the reason that that's done is that we're protecting the city's investment. The city invested millions of dollars in both closing a landfill and building a new facility so that Keene residents would have a way of getting rid of their trash according to federal and state laws. And because the trash business is a very much of a commodity-based business, and the private sector is obviously heavily involved in it, we needed to be able to ensure that the trash generated in Keene comes to our facility to help pay for the facility because of the way that our business model is structured. As you are probably all aware, and I've said this so many years, but I'm proud of this, that we are the only municipality in the state of New Hampshire that does not have any solid waste expenses on its general tax rate. But that business model, I anticipate being here next year, questioning whether or not we can continue that. My hope is that we can, as our contract with Waste Management comes to an end about a year and a half from now. But obviously, we'll be working our options and opportunities well before that time comes, and you will be an active part of that conversation, I'm sure. But frankly, with what's happened over the past couple of years, if you follow the trash business at all, you might know that there's been a proposed landfill to replace the landfill up in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. The town of Dalton is the one where Casella Waste Services is looking to potentially site one. It's running into a tremendous amount of opposition from the residents that live up in that area. And, you know, it's all pointing towards, you know, what can only amount to a disposal crisis that's starting to build its momentum. Our disposal site right now is Rochester, New Hampshire, where we truck our waste over to. It's operated by Waste Management. That currently has capacity listed until 2026, at which point, you know, if there's not a new disposal site opened up in the state of New Hampshire, we're going to run into a problem. I'm sorry, 2034 is when it's scheduled to be filled up. 2026 is when the Bethlehem landfill will be closed down, and then that disposal will have to go somewhere. Now, part of this problem is exacerbated by the fact that New Hampshire has become a popular place for surrounding states to send their waste to. That is something that is being addressed, you know, at the state level, at least, you know, giving it some attention. I'm a part of the Solid Waste Working Group that was formed by a legislative action to talk about this impending crisis and what options might be available to us. Frankly, you know, the solution in my mind is all infrastructure related. And not necessarily building more landfills, but building more capacity to be able to divert waste from landfills, because I think that it's just a huge waste to have all those resources put in the ground and have it sit there and be fossilized for the next 10,000 years. So, you know, stay tuned. You know, there's going to be some exciting times ahead in the world of waste, and I don't know where it's going to go. But I do know that, you know, we pay attention to this stuff every day. We talk about it at our office regularly. And we're well positioned to do well with whatever comes at us in the future.
Just more of a comment than a question. I just really want to encourage my fellow councilors to heed Mr. Watson's words about solid waste in the state. It's, you know, being a little bit inside the industry myself, like, I know it's going to be a serious problem. Landfills can't keep popping up. And the solution we really need to start thinking about is reducing our waste. So thank you, Duncan, for all you've done for our city, and to my fellow councilors and to the public. Heed Mr. Watson's words.
Mr. Remy, anything?
Yeah, just I'm curious if we're considering taking credit cards at the transfer station or Venmo.
Okay.
So we did receive that question just recently, and the issue with accepting credit cards at the transfer station really was around connectivity and issues with connectivity and reliability of that. I did ask our IT director to take a look at it again. I haven't heard back. This was just a recent request, so when I do hear back, I'll be sure to report out. But I know that, you know, it's been an issue related to connectivity in the past, and so unless something changed, that it's likely still an issue.
Other city councilors? All right. Thank you.
Good evening. Aaron Costa, Assistant Public Works Director. Tonight with me, I have Christian Tarr, who's the Utilities Maintenance Manager. Also joining us and will be speaking is Mary Lay, the Laboratory Manager. And unfortunately, Ben Crowder, the Water Treatment Facilities Manager, and Christopher Pelletier, the Water Sewer Operations Manager, couldn't join us tonight. But you know, Court and the Public Works Director and Duncan both set the table quite nicely for our presentation. And just wanted to give a shout out also to my staff. We operate the water and sewer, and I'm going to kind of, you know, do a presentation about both since we work, you know, in both funds. We operate a system that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I have a very talented staff of professionals that do that work, and we're very proud of the services that we provide. Just taking a look at sewer, our mission statement is basically to reduce the community's impact on its natural environment through the proper maintenance and operation of the city's collection and treatment infrastructure while maintaining compliance with state and federal regulations and fiscal responsibility. And kind of what that statement means to me when you talk about its natural environment is the wastewater treatment plant discharges 2 to 3 million gallons a day to the Ashwheelet River. And, you know, that Ashwheelet River is pretty close proximity to the plant. And, you know, when I go down there and I look at the discharge pipe and do an inspection, you can really see how well the wastewater treatment plant performs and how minimal the impact is of the wastewater treatment plant on the Ashwheelet River. The Ashwheelet River is a relatively small receiving stream for the size of the wastewater treatment plant, which kind of drives the requirements required by our discharge permit. So I really don't like the phrase that dilution is the solution to pollution, but those those calculations are factored in. So based on the size of the wastewater plant, the flow, and how big of the receiving water it is. So the Ashwheelet's pretty small, and therefore we have pretty stringent limits, which pretty much drives everything that we do. So, you know, what are our services that we provide to the city? We operate and maintain more than 94 miles of gravity sewer and force mains. Those treatment facilities, pump stations are all maintained. And then we go ahead and do sampling inspection programs at the wastewater plant. And we have an industrial pretreatment coordinator that works with businesses, and all in order to protect public health and system reliability. And to do that, you know, we have, like I said, a few different divisions that oversee and work in those areas, such as the wastewater collection system, the wastewater treatment plant, wastewater process and compliance testing, which is laboratory, maintenance, of course, and then wastewater system engineering. And together, these areas provide services that accomplish the basic mission of transporting, treating, and discharging domestic, commercial, and industrial wastewater in a manner consistent with regulatory, fiscal, and community expectations. So just quickly, just want to talk about, you know, and Christian and Mary are going to talk about this a little bit too, but just some of the accomplishments that we did and, you know, had in fiscal year 23. And one of the things that we've been working on, which Duncan set the table perfectly for this, is a sludge dryer feasibility study. The wastewater plant also has a contract with Waste Management. Our biosolids also go to that turnkey landfill in Rochester, and it's one of the most expensive line items we have in the wastewater plant's budget. We're almost up to $600,000 a year there. We produce about 4,500 wet tons of biosolids per year. And one of the things that we went ahead and did was this sludge dryer feasibility study, which we're nearly complete with, and we'll have a presentation for council with our consultants, very similar to what we just did with the water supply master plan, to kind of go over what the future is going to look like. Because right now, with the technology we have for dewatering sludge, we can only produce a product that's about 30% solids, which is really pretty good. But what that is it's also 70% water. So we looked at these sludge drying technologies, which is an add-on process to our current dewatering processes that could potentially dewater that solid sludge even further to 70, 80, 90% solids, thus reducing our overall waste and volume that we would have to go ahead and haul and dispose of, which would be really, I think, quite beneficial. Because the cost is only going to continue. There's only 3 ways, and you've probably heard me talk about this before, to handle biosolids. There's incineration, and only Manchester is the only plant in the state that does incineration. There's land application, but the future is uncertain with that based on these new PFAS regulations and what's happening with PFAS. And then the third is landfill, and you just heard Mr. Watson talk about capacity and what's happening. And landfills, I won't say they don't like biosolids, but biosolids isn't an optimum waste stream for them to receive because of its moisture content. It makes their landfills unstable. Like I said, it's only 30% solid, so it's 70% water. So if we can dry that product further, we would reduce our overall tonnage and make it maybe more attractive to continue landfilling if that's the way the city decides to go. And as we're speaking, there is a supplemental request in there for an additional $17,000, $17,500 for the additional cost of that contract. It increases on a yearly basis for sludge hauling and disposal. So we'll be presenting that sludge dryer feasibility study, which was an accomplishment for fiscal year '23. Also, I would like to say that, the investment and partnership with the solar array down at the wastewater plant has really paid dividends. It's stabilized our electricity costs. The wastewater plant is the largest consumer of electricity in Cheshire County, and there's been some pretty large fluctuations in the electricity market, but having that PPA has really benefited the city, and that's working well. It came online just about a year ago. I think it was July 1st of 2022. And then, some of the other accomplishments that we've been talking about too is the grants. So we've applied for and received a local source water protection grant, grants to help us complete the lead survey as required by the state for October of 2024. The sludge dryer feasibility study was funded with a $100,000 ARPA grant. I'm going to be coming before this committee on Thursday asking for acceptance of the strategic planning grant that we talked about for further water source development over on the Robertson Field property. And also we've worked with the state aid grant program, and we recently completed a roof replacement project, and we'll be embarking on construction of the sludge pump replacement project. And both of those are at this time eligible for SAG funding, 20% of the construction costs. So we also did some consolidating as well, and I'm not sure if you noticed in the budget book, but sewer manholes and sewer services were combined into one account. So just to make you aware of that. And then, just some of the challenges like we've already discussed tonight with rising costs. And, the utilities, certainly not immune to those, cost increase. And just we've really seen a hit in chemicals. And one of the chemicals we use at the wastewater treatment plant to meet our limits is polyaluminum chloride. And in fiscal year 1920, the cost of that chemical was $1.94 a gallon, and the city spent around $167,000 that fiscal year. Well, we just got our bids in for this coming fiscal year, so as of July 1, the new price is going to be $3.59 a gallon. So almost double, $1.65 increase, and we use about 70 to 90,000 gallons a year. So those costs are real, and we're certainly looking at potential alternatives, but those might be the basis for future capital projects, such as maybe filtration versus trying to use chemicals to enhance coagulation. So again, the supplementals, I discussed one of them. The other is split between water and sewer for CDL training. There's been some regulatory and rule changes in regards to how CDL drivers are trained and how they can go through that process. And so this supplemental split in water and sewer would fund 2 people to go ahead and pursue their CDL training. And then jumping quickly over to the water side, the mission statement there, of course, is to provide reliable and good quality drinking water that consistently meets customer expectations and state and federal standards in sufficient quantities and pressure for fire protection and commercial and domestic use through effective and efficient maintenance, repair, and operation of the water infrastructure. The city maintains around 100 miles of distribution pipe, And again, 24/7 operation of water mains, valves, hydrants, meters, service lines, the groundwater wells, the treatment plant, the storage tanks, as well as, doing testing. And there are a number of divisions that help us accomplish this. We have the water meters. There's around 6,200 accounts that water meters are responsible for the billing of those accounts, water distribution, water treatment, water system engineering, of course, water maintenance, and then the laboratory with water testing. The same challenges that we have, with chemical costs on the wastewater side, we're seeing with chemical costs on the drinking water side as well. There is a supplemental in there for an additional staff member. The Water Operations Division is responsible for, a lot of different things throughout the whole city. Again, Ben Crowder couldn't be here tonight, but he did submit something to kind of talk about what he does and what his operations and what his division does. But they're responsible for the daily operation and general maintenance of the drinking water plant, the surface water treatment facility, which is up behind Robin Hood Park, the 4 gravel-packed wells, 2 corrosion control facilities, 6 water pump stations, 6 water storage tanks, and 2 surface water reservoir dams. And many of these sites are monitored 24/7 by their SCADA system, but they do have to go out, and they're out in the field quite often, and there's a lot of infrastructure for them to maintain. There's 2.5 people in the Water Operations Division, the water plant manager, 1 utility operator, and then a sewer service aide that splits his time between both facilities, the water plant and the wastewater plant. But because of just the workload, that sewer service aide has been spending most of his time, or actually all of his time, at the water facility and helping out the water operators. That additional position would allow the water plant manager to do more administrative work and continue to, work on CIP projects, help out with grant applications, more administrative stuff, more administrative work, and it would allow some more flexibility, because if somebody's on vacation and if somebody's sick, we're really thin. And this would help build our resiliency and strength of that division, having that additional utility operator. And Director Bloomquist touched on this about the on-call. I have 4 different divisions that do on-call services. So the water and sewer distribution and collection, they do on-call. Chris's department, utilities maintenance, does on-call. And then wastewater operations and water operations do on-call. So the water and wastewater operations groups are smaller, and therefore they have a greater burden to do more frequent on-call because there's less people in the rotation. And as Director Bloomquist said, it can be straining, and it's kind of a different mindset than in the past. When I first started, the operators were very happy to have the every other week on call and just work for the money. But that compensation isn't attractive as much anymore, and there's more of a work-life balance that these folks would like to see, and having that additional utility operator would certainly help with that aspect of the duties as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Christian.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Christian Tar, Utilities Maintenance Foreman. Aaron asked me to just put together a brief description of what we do and my staff and objectives that we met over the year and moving forward. So the utilities maintenance staff is consisted of 4 people plus myself, so an entire group of 5, 4 extremely skilled individuals. I have 2 master electricians that work for me, 1 maintenance technician, and then maintenance mechanic. And we have a very diversified set of skills. On any given day, our requirements could be a fairly expertise level of carpentry, masonry, plumbing, mechanical work. And very rarely is our daily routine the same. We are constantly either in a preventative maintenance, a predictive maintenance, or an emergency maintenance type of operation for all water and wastewater infrastructure and facilities. The staff of 4 on the wastewater side maintains the wastewater treatment facility, Martel Court Pump Station, along with 4 other wastewater lift stations. And then on the water side, we maintain the water treatment facility, 6 booster stations, 2 pressure reducing valve stations, and then 6 storage tanks. Unlike the highway division, we don't have a ton of the public interaction. Our primary clients are Aaron's staff, the water operators. My staff and myself, our objective is to make sure that the equipment they need to operate the facilities is working properly to supply safe potable drinking water and maintain the collection services. And we try diligently to keep a very high level of professionalism and service to them. I would also note that all but 1 member of my staff are also licensed water and wastewater operators able to run the facilities that Aaron oversees. So the level of expertise in my division is of the utmost to us, and they're very highly skilled. Over 23 fiscal year, we had a lot of projects we oversaw. We had the rebuild of a large backwash pump at the water treatment facility. That unit had not been serviced since its installation in 1992. Major chemical feed system upgrades on our well fields to keep the area safer. We were having a lot of problems with transfer of chemicals, so we updated that. We oversaw 2 new generator installations, one at Martel Court Pump Station and the wastewater treatment plant. And we also worked with the contractor for the completion of the renovations at the wastewater treatment plant laboratory, which we finished in this year. Along with that, myself and my foreman work very diligently with the implementation of the city's asset management program, which has involved the design and putting into practice more preventative maintenance plans and utilizing digital inspection formats. So we can go to a job site, we can fill out a digital inspection form, we can go back, input the information, and then be able to give better condition indications to our equipment, which inevitably is going to help with the maintenance operations moving forward. In '24, we intend some more projects, which would be a new generator at a pump station at Chapman Road, the compressed air system at the wastewater treatment plant, and continued chemical feed system upgrades at the water plant, noting again that it's 1992 era equipment that needs to be updated. As everybody has kind of hinted on, money and time constraints are the biggest challenges in my division. Costs of materials are overwhelming. One example is a tank that I had bought in 2019 for storage of the chlorine that we use at the water plant. Shipping included had cost me about $4,800. I replaced that same tank this year, and shipping included, it cost me $93. So we're looking at double the cost with the shipping and the materials. The fuel prices are what are driving the shipping up, but worse than that is the duration of time that we're waiting for the products. Court had noted the transformer at Martel Court to complete my generator project. At the time when that equipment was ordered, it was 18 months. Just speaking with the contractor who finished the work, that exact same piece of equipment now is extended out over 2 years. So to get that product now is just continuing. And I don't know how long this is going to last, but we'll see this type of issue for some time continued.
Questions? Yes.
Hi, this is for Aaron. On page 199, there's like rental office space for almost 80,000. What is that in reference to?
I think I will defer to the finance director on that one.
It's 526020. Page 199.
It's part of the inner funds that we have. We have the office management team that takes care of some of the work. at, excuse me, at Public Works and at wastewater treatment plant and the water plant, so is the rent, did I get that one right, Court? Yeah. It's the rental space for the office space at 350 Marlborough Street. Yeah.
All right. If I may, it is a little confusing, but when you have separate funds like water and sewer, they are entirely separate. So if there's activity that's supporting those funds in the general fund, then they need to be charged back to water and sewer. So the activities that happen at the Public Works Department on 350 Marlborough Street, at 350 Marlborough Street, are a percentage of the work that's done by the individuals in the admin team, and a percentage of the, in this case, it's the space, is charged back. So there's an allocation that's done for fleets like that, for computers like that, across the organization, and in this case, it's back and forth, almost like journal entries between the two funds for work at Marlborough Street that supports them. So it's a percentage of the building, use of the building. That's why it's called rental.
But it's also the employees too, right?
Yep, there's a fee in there as well for that, separately. Yep.
Also, you can recover it in the rate that's charged for water or for sewer.
So also with me tonight is Mary Lay, Laboratory Manager. She's also going to give a quick little presentation about what the laboratory does and what her division does.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. The laboratory division has 3 staff members, myself, our lab technician, and our industrial pretreatment coordinator. The Keene City Lab's mission is to provide accurate and timely data for wastewater drinking water operations. We test hundreds of samples each month for process control as well as regulatory reporting. We also coordinate the many sampling programs for wastewater and the drinking water, including water quality monitoring at the surface water reservoirs in Roxbury, as well as groundwater monitoring around the well fields at Court Street and West Street. The mission of the industrial pretreatment program, which is part of the lab, is to regulate the discharges into the sewer system from the city's industries and businesses to protect the wastewater process as well as the environment. This involves permitting the significant industrial users in the city and inspections of their waste processes, as well as many grease trap inspections at the local restaurants. Another duty of the lab division is to oversee our septage receiving process. Last year, we received over 6 million gallons of septage and holding tank waste from area septic haulers that come from all over other communities, as well as Keene, Marlborough, and Swansea. The lab checks in every load of septage that comes to the facility, and we handle the accounting of the volumes received for billing purposes. In fiscal year 23, it was a big year for the lab. We underwent a massive renovation, and we have a beautiful new lab that went on from March through October. And during that time, we sent out all of our compliance samples to our contract lab, and that experience made it clear how important it is to have an in-house lab. We had to wait weeks for some results that we needed to report to the state. And these were tests that we could have done in-house. You know, we normally do in-house and on demand, so it made it clear how important it is to be able to do that ourselves. In addition, in 23, we had a successful on-site assessment of our quality system from NELAP, the accrediting board, and we were reaccredited for drinking water bacteria analysis. We also passed all of our proficiency tests for drinking water and wastewater at 100% accuracy. The industrial pretreatment program passed an audit from DES as well. And in addition, our industrial pretreatment coordinator worked on reviving the 4th grade science fair after COVID, and we just recently hosted the state science fair earlier this month. Goals for 24, we'll continue to provide accurate, reliable data to the drinking water and wastewater divisions. We plan to increase our sampling at the reservoirs and well fields this summer because we have a Keene State intern starting, which was a supplemental request, by the way. $4,000 supplemental request for the Keene State intern. And our industrial pretreatment coordinator will continue with inspections and permitting our industrial users. Our fiscal challenges are what you've heard before. Everything costs more, our equipment costs more, supplies, and we also have more requirements for testing. Our new NIPDES permit for wastewater includes a requirement that we sample from the river every month for phosphorus, as well as new nitrogen and aluminum reporting requirements. And then on the drinking water side, the PFAS regulations are frequently changing and the detection limits get lower and lower. So we'll work on staying on top of those changes in regulations and plan accordingly. So, but it's hard to plan when you don't know what the regulations will be. Any questions?
And I'd just like to say that Mary kind of breezed over that proficiency testing, note there. But what that means is they receive blind samples, they don't know the results, and they're required to go ahead and analyze those samples, not knowing what those results are, and then turn them in. And you said 100% accuracy?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good for the amount of work that they do and the different tests that they perform. So that's really an accomplishment. I used to run those tests.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Tina?
Did you add a position? I was looking under water and wages, and it shows like going from 90,000 to 141,000.
It's that utility operator, the H9 position at the water treatment plant.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor Remy? Other counselors? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's what he wants to be. Yeah. He feels it's very important.
Saving the best for last.
We talk about this every year, but fleet always brings up the rear. But Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director, here with Jim Mountford, the Fleet Services Manager. And before I turn it over to Jim, I just wanted to give a very brief perspective. So recently, my daughter's Subaru needed a headlight changed. And I thought, oh, well, I've actually done that before, so I'll tackle that. It's a 2013 Subaru. And I started to take things apart and realize that in order to change a light bulb in a Subaru, we have to take the bumper off, which is way beyond my capability. And it just sort of was one of those moments where I connected with the fleet department division, because the range of services that our fleet department provides is really, truly staggering when you think about everything from literally a lawnmower up to a fire truck, and all of the complexities of what they have to deal with. As we all know, technology has made rapid advancements in our vehicles and equipment, and these mechanics who basically don't know always what's wrong with something, and when it's brought in, have to then diagnose the issue and then solve the problems to get the rolling stock back on the road. And it's not a normal thing to have a fleet department that is able to handle that broad range. Usually you have specialty types of shops that deal with just automobiles or large equipment. And our fleet services division has to handle the absolute gamut of what comes in. And they do an actual remarkable job. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that before I turn it over to Jim to talk about the budget.
Good evening. My name is Jim Mountford. I'm the fleet manager. Part of the metrics for fleet services, we are a 24-hour day, 365 division. We have an on-call mechanic 7 days a week throughout the year. We actually have a storekeeper, not a storekeeper anymore, but we had an admin coordinator who actually is a service writer. He's the parts man. He also does a lot of the finance work because we charge out fuel to a number of other organizations within the city, the high school, the college, home health care, Keene Housing Authority all buy fuel through the city, which is through fleet services. We take care of the WEX cards, which are the gasoline, as fleet has a diesel island at the facility on 330 Marlboro. One of the things going on this year, the increase in fuel prices, it hasn't dropped as we were hoping it would, as in the past. We're going to be about 56% higher in 2024 as we were in 2022. We still are getting our 18 cents off from the feds for our diesel fuel and our gasoline prices. But it has been a challenge, especially when we have a hard winter, where we have an event where we have storm damage and the trucks are running a lot more than we even planned for. So it's one of those areas. And we will be looking and hopefully receiving a supplemental for $51,000 this year to add to the fuel prices. With that, as far as the fleet division, a little background on the fleet division. There is myself, who's the manager, as I stated before, our admin coordinator who takes care of the mechanics, takes care of questions that come in from the other divisions as for scheduling and so on and so forth. We have a lead mechanic who takes care of business when I'm not there, as on vacation, or from out at other meetings or on the road for whatever. Super smart individual, I might add too. I also have 3 other technicians, mechanics, that, as Duncan stated, these guys are, the top of their game. We're working on stuff that nobody in the area has even touched or seen or even works on anymore. Part of that explains our labor rate, if you look on page 221, where our labor rate is between what a normal automotive entity and what a heavy equipment repair shop would be. So as the fleet is leased out from Fleet Services, everything is done much like a normal business. We actually create repair orders, parts get billed out, there's records kept on every vehicle that's owned by the city of Keene, not just stuff that's, solely owned by the fleet, but also the fire department, the stuff that's not leased from the police department and the airport. So at any time, we can tell you exactly the history, how much fuel goes into it, how much parts, how much labor, how long we've owned it, any damages or repairs that we've done over the course of time. Fleet Services also purchases and sells all the equipment for the city of Keene, except for the ambulances and the fire engines. Their staff vehicles are all done through the Fleet Services Division, everything from the PD, everything from all the other divisions, including administrative. We work on all of those vehicles. There's 159 vehicles that are through the rental program with Fleet Services. There's 266 total that are repaired by 4 individuals, overseen by myself and the admin coordinator. Pretty busy operation. And we also, as it stated, purchase all the diesel fuel for the city, including the airport, including Parks and Rec, including the transfer station, who has their own fuel stations at their facilities. We schedule deliveries, we do the billing, we do the maintenance on those islands. The one at the 330 Marlborough Street, that is solely maintained by myself and 2 other individuals that are licensed to take care of that little piece of pie, per se. We're still using 20% biodiesel, so that is 20% soybean bio that's mixed in with our diesel fuel. The only time we don't use the 20% is over the winter months because of gelling issues, because of the cold weather. And that runs from October to April. We're still running B5, so we're still running a percentage of biofuel over the winter months. And we treat that with chemicals so that it prevents it from gelling up during the cold nights. 20 below zero is tough on diesel fuel. As far as the other organizations go, we, as Duncan was stating, just a little tidbit about that. The new police cruisers that we've been getting, the interceptors, it takes almost 2.5 hours to change a burnt headlight bulb in those, because the entire front bumper, grill assembly, headlight assembly comes out of those cars for an $18 bulb, and then we put it all back together. And it's literally parts all over the floor. So, kudos to my staff to have the ability to do stuff like that. With a lot of the newer equipment that's out there, the EPA regulations that are with these vehicles has required a lot more training. We use what's called a shop key program that helps us out. Otherwise these guys would spend months training. This is an in-house service that we pay for. We hook up computers, believe it or not, to your vehicle, including our payloaders, our backhoes, our fire apparatus, so that we can go in and diagnose what's actually wrong with the vehicle when that problem comes along. The cost of repairing those, new bits and pieces that are installed on these trucks is astronomical. We just had to replace an exhaust system on one of our 2014 dump trucks that was $10,000 for the exhaust system and $2,000 for an EGR cooler, which helped the engine run cleaner as it goes down the road. And in conjunction with the biofuel that we're using, there's actually very little diesel smell that you actually get from the vehicles that the city is running. So, pretty extensive program with that stuff. We do a lot of upfitting. We do also do some upfitting with a local organization when it comes to do emergency lighting on the vehicles. Usually when they're upfit from that organization, we are the sole owners afterwards as far as repairs, emergency strobe lights, sirens, things like that. And as with a lot of the other people who discussed tonight, technology is getting the best of us now. We're getting to the point where our police cruisers are all due for new radios and new sirens and new lighting hardware, which is a exponential cost. We've been actually lucky to get along by using a lot of the same materials for almost 20 years, by transferring from an old car to a new car that's being built. And then, once it goes, we replace it as we need to, but we've been pretty good about doing that. Tires this year have gone up almost 20%. So we go through just about 40 tires for the police department through the course of the year. The heavy fleet, which is the highway fleet, dump truck tires used to be $400 a piece. Now they're $680 a piece. So there's exponential costs that go on with that. Luckily, we're not doing every truck every year. It's usually just a few. The payload of tires, we do those every 4 years, not because we want to, it's because we have to. We're running them right down to the bare limit that we can. They went from $2,200 a piece to almost $4,000 a piece this past year. And those aren't, luckily, we don't have to deal with some of the stuff the other guys do with truck freight. We deal with local companies for that stuff. And some of my CIP stuff, we've seen a 25% increase with some of the vehicles that we have to purchase to replace for the upcoming budget year. We're doing okay with that stuff. I mean, it's been tough. We've actually kept some vehicles, done some body work to them so we can move them out a couple of years down the road. And that's a tribute to my guys that have that skill. We don't farm out that work. We do that in-house. So rust repair, we do oil undercoating with a bio-friendly oil undercoat substance. We do that every year when we do vehicle inspections. So when 266 vehicles go through the shop from the start of July 1st to the end of September, every one of those vehicles will come in, get inspected, tires, brakes if they need it, and oil undercoated as their way out so that we can prolong keeping some of these vehicles. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, we take care of everybody that's driving a vehicle or operating a piece of equipment for the city of Keene.
Questions?
Just one. There's three things that it has: overtime, stipend, and standby. And I know you said it's a 24/7 service.
Sure.
So the standby, I'm assuming probably like
Standby's,
rotate for somebody who's gonna be on call for
yes,
the weekend.
yes.
But what would be
Regular overtime is for like, so if we have a snowstorm, so because when highway division is plowing, we need a mechanic on staff. So whenever they're out working, we're working too. So that's where your regular overtime comes in. We'll say my guys are working 8 hours. If they're out plowing, if the highway division's out plowing, one of my guys will stay for another 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours because there's only 4 of us to, keep over 25 vehicles on the road plowing. And then the stipend is another, that's an admin situation there. That can probably be better answered by finance. But back to the regular overtime, that's exactly what that is for. That's for when my guys stay behind to do work, or when they come in through a shift change, there's overtime that may be involved with that. So they'll be working from 11 o'clock till 7 o'clock in the morning. If there's major repairs that have to be done, say there's a busted plow or truck that needs to get back on the road, because there's only 4 of them, they'll stay. And as odd as it sounds, there's times that I'm involved on the floor with the staff as well.
So what's the stipend then?
The stipend is actually some compensation for my oversight of that operation.
What's that?
Sorry. Again, because it's a separate fund, so we're charging up a portion of his salary to that line. And then the standby is for people who are on call.
Which he answered that
Oh,
part.
sorry. I missed that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Remy? He's flying. Counselor? Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Can you find your way home? Just south. Just headed south. Richmond. All right, I think we've accomplished our mission, and we'll be back here on Thursday with our regular agenda, and we'll talk amongst ourselves on the budget. Thank you very much. Thank you to all.